see what this beast can do.
Welcome back to JKPRising. A few days ago, I uploaded a video called The Battlefield Facebook page might have teased Dead Space 4. I still think it's nothing significant, but it could be something more. But let's take that video a step further. What can Dead Space 4 learn from Battlefield? Before I get to my list, why am I even mentioning Battlefield and Dead Space? Two completely different IPs that have nothing to do with each other, except they might actually be somewhat in common. As we know, Visceral Games, who made the Dead Space franchise, they were the creators for Battlefield Hardline, because EA's been switching companies around to do different projects, and now Visceral Games is doing a Star Wars game because EA wants Visceral to make a Star Wars game. I also made a video on what Dead Space 4 can learn from Star Wars. If anyone's interested, you can watch the video, annotation on the screen, or link in the description below. Visceral Games made the campaign for Battlefield Hardline, and DICE has done, I think, the multiplayer. Visceral Games and DICE have worked with each other, so they have crossed over, so to say. With that being said, where does Dead Space 4 fall into this? I don't think there are these big conspiracies where Dead Space 4 is in secret top development. Honestly, I think what Visceral Games got out of Battlefield Hardline, they're going to put that into Dead Space 4, and what they're going to be getting out of this new Star Wars game, they're going to put that knowledge into Dead Space 4. Here are 3 things that I recognize from Battlefield that I think Dead Space could take advantage of. First thing is the graphics, Frostbite engine on the Battlefield games. How would EA give Visceral Games the Frostbite engine? That's an engine that's used for internal projects pretty much only, so like Battlefield. That's why Respawn Entertainment, who makes Titanfall, did not get the engine because they're not in EA. So how can Visceral Games get the Frostbite engine? How would this even benefit the game? Frostbite's a pretty good looking engine. I think Dead Space has a good engine. I think it looks way better than Titanfall and Titanfall 2. But a prettier looking game is always something that we want to see, especially with all these high-end PCs, Xbox Scorpios, PlayStation 4 Pros. The technology is getting better, so graphics are going to be more on the demand, I personally believe. And it's always nice to have a prettier looking game. Not to mention, if EA gave Visceral Games the Frostbite engine, that would be a lot of trust in this game. And how would they gain trust? A new Dead Space game hasn't been out for several years by the time 4 comes out. That gives them a lot of time to build up hype for Dead Space 4, to re-interest people in this series since there's been such a long hiatus. EA wanted Dead Space 3 to achieve a certain number of sales, which it failed to hit. But since there's been several years since the last one, and with the right marketing and the right direction, Dead Space 4 could be marketed very well, and the Frostbite engine could just make everything look better, make it perform better. If Visceral Games sells really well on this new Star Wars project, and if they really do a damn good job on this current project that they're working on, that could be a way for them to give EA more trust and say, you know what, let's give you this engine and see what you can do with it. That would be really generous of them. I don't know if they would do that. I still think, like I said, Dead Space looks pretty great, and regardless of whenever the game comes out, Dead Space 4, the graphics are going to look way better than Dead Space 3, so by default the graphics will be better, but I think Frostbite would give it that extra push it needs. Plus, Frostbite's probably a more capable engine than the Dead Space engine right now. It can handle more, it can do more multitasking, all the graphical performances it can handle and how stable it can be. So I'm sure from a programming standpoint, maybe Visceral could pick up a thing or two. The second thing I think Dead Space 4 can learn from Battlefield is the multiplayer section. Now this is all debatable because we may not even have multiplayer in Dead Space 4. It was in Dead Space 2, and for what I can hear, people did enjoy it for what it was. A lot of people think multiplayer and other modes like the Horde mode should not be in Dead Space 4, but I'll be making a video coming up where I talk about how these modes are essential for a good game. I'll talk about that in a different video. Battlefield has really good multiplayer, and they're able to balance out all these different weapons and all these vehicles and all these maps, so DICE knows how to make good multiplayer games. From what I heard, the Dead Space 2 multiplayer was a bit lackluster. It was just kind of thrown in there, so maybe if they do expand on multiplayer, they can learn how to actually write a better multiplayer game from the Battlefield franchise. The last thing I want to talk about is community/replayability. If Dead Space 4 is going to have modes like the Horde mode, the multiplayer, or side missions, or any amount of content in the game, they're going to need to know how to have people replay the game a lot or how to stay with the game. And Dead Space already has a really passionate community, but DICE as a company has been able to maintain a large amount of people and have them stay with their product for a long period of time. I'm pretty sure the Battlefield audience is a lot bigger than the Dead Space audience. Battlefield has had a large following for such a long period of time. It's now beaten Call of Duty, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason why DICE is praised so much like Naughty Dog. There's reasons for why these companies do so well, because they keep their fan base active and they keep producing content. They follow feedback from their fan base and they keep them happy. Those are 3 things I think Dead Space could pick up on from Battlefield. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What can Dead Space 4 learn from Battlefield? Obviously, Battlefield is not a master in all these 3 categories, but I think they have a lot of experience in these 3. For anything Dead Space 4, Dead Space, BioShock 4, BioShock, Halo 6, subscribe to JKPRising. If you enjoyed anything I had to say, please remember to give the video a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on JKPRising.